Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning, or whatever time it is with where you are. My name is Erin Bird, and I'm with the Circular Economy Club in Calgary, and I'll be your moderator today. I'd like to invite you to please share your name and your affiliation in the chat. And we're going to get going with our presentation this morning. We have quite a lot to share with you as we get going. So we meet today on a virtual platform, using technology not available in many Indigenous communities. And each of us are privileged to be on sacred land that has supported human beings for thousands of years and is rich in Indigenous history, knowledge, and tradition of those who maintain balance with nature for millennia and still do. In this spirit, we believe it is crucial for us as settlers and guests to acknowledge this land's traditional names and its caretakers, about which our schools did not teach us. So Turtle Island refers to the continent of North America. And for me, I live in Mohkinstsis, or Calgary, Alberta, and it's situated on the traditional territories of the Niitsitapi Blackfoot Confederacy and the people of the Treaty 7 region, adjacent to where the Bow River meets the Elbow River in the watershed of the Bow River Basin. So we want to acknowledge where everyone else is from and hope that you will get to know the names of the lands that what they were traditionally called. We acknowledge all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people across Turtle Island as the original stewards of this land and in perpetuity while their histories and cultures influence our community to this day. We invite you to consider your relationship to the land and how you benefit from being there while the original caretakers may not. Take a moment to reflect on, research, understand, honor, and respect peoples Indigenous to the lands where you live, work, and play. And I'll also just add that, you know, the concept of circular economy, the concept of balance and reciprocity between all beings is something not new to Indigenous teachings. So we can learn a lot from what they have that they have integrated into their philosophy of life. And hopefully that will help us enhance our knowledge of circular economy as well. So thank you, everyone. Next slide, please. So I'm going to let maybe Audrey talk a little bit about circular economy clubs.
Okay, shall I go to the next slide then? Everyone.
Oh yeah, sorry, I sort of skipped over our agenda. This is our brief agenda, but yeah, we'll get going right away into the organization introductions.
Circular Economy Club, as many of you may know, is a global organization, and it is its job and its vision is to connect people. Circular Economy Club is a global organization, and their vision is to be a network enabler for people interested in the circular economy. They promote local city chapters or clubs, and they have 280 clubs in 140 countries. It's actually an amazing network. And that's how we all met that are on our team here, because we have representation from different Canadian cities. And the little story behind that is that when the pandemic started and everything became virtual, I said to myself, well, if we're presenting virtually and we have clubs across Canada in different cities, why aren't we presenting together and getting to know each other? And it's been really an amazing journey. I have to say our team is fun, and we're getting to know each other very well, and these national presentations are really key to understanding things that are happening across Canada. So we are very appreciative to Circular Economy Clubs for connecting us, and we've expanded their mandate to become a national club, which they don't normally do. We're sort of stepping outside the box. I'd also like to introduce you to Circular Regions, who has become our supporting partner. Again, we found Circular Regions through a CCRI initiative presentation, and the CCRI is a project with 15 municipalities, giving them capacity to learn how to ramp up to the circular economy. And Cynthia from Circular Regions was presenting, and I said to myself, boy, what an amazing tool. And we really would appreciate some insight into your tool. And they were so generous that they supplied us with the intake form for the secondary intake, where we developed the analysis you're going to see later on in this presentation. And I would suggest you visit their website and see all the incredible things that they're doing. So big thank you to Cynthia from Circular Regions. So our business report, which will be ready shortly after this presentation as we refine it a little bit, will explain to everyone that this is a kickoff for a much larger project that our Canadian Circular Economy Club is doing. And the primary goals of this larger project is to engage with Canadian business and help them identify how they can support and be supported in the circular economy, and that they have connections with other business to support them. And to really give the public and other business some standardized ways to look at the business that we are building in our network, and to analyze and compare data, because as you know, data is a very, very important tool to understand where are we now and where are we going and how do we get there. So we're very excited to sort of be that top level reporting tool that gives us insight into how we might address gaps or increase knowledge and connect different business together to transition more quickly to the circular economy. Collaboration is what it's all about. That's our driving factor.
Yeah. So maybe I can take over from here, Audrey. Is that all right?
Sure. Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, no worries. So we decided to do this Canadian Circular Business Report, and really we're at the very early stage of developing this report. So, we started out where we wanted to intake businesses across Canada who were incorporating circularity into their business in some way. And we had a first stage intake where we actually met or received applications from 38 different businesses across 6 provinces. And then we asked out those same businesses to complete a second stage intake. And we were able to get 23 business case study submissions through the second stage intake from 5 provinces across Canada. So it's pretty neat. And that's the second stage intake was actually using the survey that Circular Regions had available that they had already started using in Sweden and Norway. And so we're, the next city or the next country on the list to start using this to collect case studies on a country level. And it's pretty exciting that we were able to use the survey. And now we have our case studies now on the Circular Regions website where people can view these case studies, and we can continue to collect additional case studies as we go. So we're anticipating being able to collect, maybe up to 100 different case studies across Canada and really build out this network. Next slide. So the methodology is that, we have this public outreach that we were just really using our networks to be able to contact the different businesses that we knew about, but and then obviously asking for voluntary completion of the secondary intake survey. And we did that as an interview so that we actually got to know the businesses face-to-face virtually through different spokespeople who were in the circular economy clubs across Canada. And, then we did a bit of an evaluation out of those 23 submissions to try to have a really good representation, a cross-section of all different types of businesses across Canada. And that's how we chose our panelists who you're going to be meeting today. And we're only featuring 6 panelists today because, it's a very short session, but we're hoping that we're going to have additional events like this where you can get to meet some of the other circular businesses or businesses that are incorporating circularity into their business as we go. So we're hoping to have more events like this and in different formats as well. So just to give you a bit of a snapshot on where we saw different things coming out in the survey, we did ask how businesses align with the SDGs, so Sustainable Development Goals. And we were pretty excited to see that pretty much every single Sustainable Development Goal, I think the only one that's not represented here is number 14, which was a peace and social justice. But all other SDGs are represented in some way by the businesses that completed the secondary intake form. And the ones that are at the forefront kind of make sense that SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, is top of the list, as well as sustainable cities and communities. Next slide. And then just to give you a bit of a snapshot on the participating business models, we really are seeing representation all around the different spectrum of business models for a circular economy. We were thinking that in the next stage, or as we try to get more information and more case studies, we would maybe start to plot these so that you could see the clusters of where we're seeing more of these types of businesses, and try to do some analysis on like where are the gaps, where can we support businesses more, where can we encourage more business all over the spectrum. So category of business, it's not surprising that waste management is a leading area of concern. By far, that was the most that most people chose. And then we do see a lot around recycling, social enterprise, community, material flows. And we were really happy to see that material flows is above remanufacture. So just little things that are coming out of this very first sampling of 23 businesses. And, you know, as we collect more, we're hoping to see whether this changes, because it can change over time as we get more case studies and more varied businesses, and maybe even broaden the way that we do the outreach to get more businesses on board. For the stakeholder and business models, we're noticing that private sector is at the top, and that public sector is a close second. But it's also very encouraging to see that it's not a huge gap between, like when you look at the percentages, it's really that everyone is almost equally represented, which shows that we all have to work together. We all have an equal role as stakeholders in this type of work. And the business to business and business to consumer are the front runners. Not sure, Audrey, if you wanted to add anything to anything that I'm kind of just running with it, but if you have anything to add, please pipe in.
I think the only thing I wanted to add possibly is that in the work that I've done in circular economy, there seems to be a delicate balance between the business to business and business to consumer, and that they really work hand in hand, you know, making consumers aware of the products that are available, and yet growing circular business so that there's ability for consumers to live into the circular economy. So it's represented very well here.
And this is interesting as well. You know, the case studies that we've received so far, primarily urban. That doesn't mean that we may start to see even more rural or peri-urban as we get more case studies on board. And then the scale of business. Yeah, Audrey, you kind of mentioned that, you know, the business has this local model, but then they can see it replicable. Not sure if you wanted to make a comment on that.
If you can replicate a local model, such as Styro to Go is a good example. They have trucks that work very hyper local, but yet you can replicate that business in different cities to be an on-demand situation. So they are local, but yet can be replicated to scale them up to be national and even global. So we noticed that many of the business participants see themselves as global or national because of that ability to scale up.
And looking at the regional levels, I mean, there is quite a nice balance between the meso, micro, and macro. And we'll see if that starts to change as we get more case studies. For the environmental, social, and it should be economic impacts. So we've actually tried to color code these so that you can tell the environmental is in the green, and then social is in the blue, and economic is in the yellow. And so you can see from the bar chart that environmental is a front runner. Like a lot of what we're focusing on is the environmental impacts out of these businesses. However, social is a close second, and economic is obviously very important. And so, you know, looking at kind of that triple bottom line, trying to balance all of that, it's really interesting. The top social impact is to work in partnership with others, which kind of makes sense. And we'll see if that changes as we get additional case studies. And yeah, the economic impacts are an important factor, which supports that need for transition to circular economy. So we'll see if that starts to change as well. For societal readiness level, yeah, we were really impressed that most of the businesses that we interviewed had this integrated into society already. So that's very encouraging to see. Audrey, did you have anything to add into this slide?
Well, our hope going forward is to somehow find those startups that aren't fully integrated yet and to give them a little more visibility. So the difficulty is in finding them. And so that's why it's a huge benefit that we have, Circular Economy Club ambassadors across the country, and they can, tune into their own communities and their own cities to bring forward the names of those companies that are startups. So if anybody on this webinar at this time have some startups they know of, or circular business that didn't get registered with us, we'd really love it if you could pass on their information to us so that we can continue to build them out as part of our network. So I don't know if the panelists remember that there was a large section that was based on your input regarding cycle phases. And so the phases of each business type, or business types in general, would be to begin with, your materials, and then you would be followed by design, concept and design, and then followed by production. And of course, consumption and stock comes out of production, and then waste is the last phase. So what we did is we asked each business in their secondary intake form supplied by Circular Regions, how did their business relate to these different phases? And you can see on the right-hand side some of the key words that were used in those questions, and they sit on that wheel, and they relate to each of the phases. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of where tactics used by each circular business would fall into the phases. So it's interesting to see here that waste is a core focus, and we saw that also in the other diagram where waste was top of mind for everyone. But while it is diminished in this one, as opposed to being a larger input, it's because primarily right now, production and consumption phases are what's happening within the models, the business models. They're working on those two particular areas. So that's why it's a bit of a flip from the waste on the previous slide to waste being a smaller piece. As we move further into our project, we'll be doing deeper analysis with an even more extensive intake survey, which will give us more understanding around the policies that are being executed and supported, and the educational and behavioral shift resources that circular business is employing. So look forward to sharing more findings with you in the future.
So yeah, next steps for this project really are that, we've gotten this initial sample of businesses. We want to collect more data, because the bigger that our sample size, the more that we can learn from what's going on in Canada. Where can we see gaps? How can we encourage circularity in business in different facets? We want to perform more analysis. This could be a great opportunity to compare the results from Canada versus other countries. If there are other countries that start to use circular regions and their survey intake process for their cities, then it'll be great to just get kind of that global perspective. And then we hope to develop an annual report where we can summarize all of the findings and really come to some good conclusions to help us provide a direction for where circularity in business goes in Canada, and really also just foster this business to business network. And that's really what we want to do as Circular Economy Clubs of Canada, is come together and see how we can leverage each other and find those learnings, those opportunities to keep pushing circularity in business.
And I'll just add one thing. We also would like to share with the public how things are growing, because often the public feels like there isn't traction and that we aren't moving forward because they don't see the whole picture at a national level. So if we are able to share, how many business do we find today versus in 3 months? Well, as the numbers grow, it gives hope to people that we are moving in the right direction, but you kind of need that collaboration to show the growth. So that's one of our big objectives as well, is to give hope to the circular economy enthusiasts out there.
Great. So we're going to get into getting to meet some of our panelists. So we have, Joanne Defoe is here from Chop Valley YYC. We have Charles Farag with BizBiz Share, Cody Irwin with Sharewares, Cher Meriwether from Provision Coalition, Jacomian Van Tonder from Metal Tech Alley, and Robert Harrett from StyroGo. So we're going to go through each one of these, and each person's going to have a few minutes just to introduce themselves, and then we're going to pose a question to them afterwards. So let's start with our first one, which is Charles. And Charles, you were going to share a video, right?
Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah.
You go ahead and share.
Great. So that was the quick video. So thank you all. So yeah, Business Share, as you can see, we are a B2B resource marketplace. So we are essentially a tech company. We developed our technology back in 2014 and 2015 is when we first launched. Just in Quebec alone, we have close to 3,000 companies, and we also have BizBiz BC, and we're also doing a soft launch in Ontario this month with the Recycling Council of Ontario. So essentially what our business does is it allows companies in a local area to upload their resources and assets. And we consider everything to be assets and resources, from human resources to machinery, whether it's fixed or mobile, heavy equipment, whatever it is. And our technology allows for any sector or any industry to use it. So whether you're in the restaurant business or industrial, manufacturing, construction, it doesn't matter. You can upload your resources. You can find other companies in the area. So if you need a machine or something that you want to rent out, you can search for it. You can negotiate, different terms and whatnot. We also offer brokerage services. So yeah, I'm going very quick here, obviously, because I only have a couple of minutes, but that's essentially what our technology does. And by the end of the year, we project being all over Canada, and we're also doing a launch in the United States starting January 2022. So that's BizBiz Share, and thank you all for joining us. And we're going to be taking questions later on, so I look forward to hearing questions from the audience.
Great, thanks. Let's go on to Provision Coalition.
Thank you. I'm Cher Meriwether. I'm the founder and CEO of Provision Coalition Incorporated, and we are a boutique consultancy that works exclusively in the food industry, from primary agriculture through to retail. And specifically, our purpose is about making food sustainably, and our vision is one of a circular food system. For us, a circular food system is one that is inspired by the planet's natural cycles. It reimagines and regenerates the systems that feed us, eliminating waste, sharing economic prosperity, and nourishing our communities. When we service the food system, we work across 5 key areas. First being people. We know that people are the heart of any business, and if you can have the best technology in the world, but if the people don't want to use it, it will fail. So we spend a lot of time on culture and creating a regenerative culture, as we like to call it, and moving away from the transactional environment that is typical in the food system. We spend a lot of time working on strategy with executives, helping them embed purpose. So why do they exist beyond profits? Sustainability and circularity into the heart of their business. We work in the operations. So how do we eliminate all forms of waste, whether that is energy, water, food waste, or labor waste? And then we will also work with companies once they've got their own house in order on their supply chains. So how do we source responsibly? How do we create transparency within the food system? And then the final area where we work is all around the data and the storytelling. So we help companies collect the right data so that they can monitor, measure, and track against the targets that they're setting so that they can communicate both internally and externally with their storytelling and their ESG reporting. So that's a little bit about the work that we do. We are based in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, and we were part of the planning team that created the Our Food Future initiative, which is an initiative to create the first circular food economy that's tech-enabled at a regional level within the city of Guelph and county of Wellington. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we answer the questions. But in essence, we're attempting to, we have three key objectives. And the first is that we are hoping to increase access to nutritious food by 50%. We're looking to create 50 new circular collaborations and circular businesses and increase the value of what was once deemed waste by 50% and do that by 2025. So that's a little bit about provision, and I'll share more with you in a couple of moments.
Great, thank you so much, Cher. How about StyroGo?
Hi there, my name is Robert, founder and president of StyroGo Canada. In essence, in a nutshell, StyroGo is a mobile styrofoam recycling company. Polystyrene, as it's formerly known, styrofoam as it's known to the general public, is easily the most popular packaging material in use today. More than 80% of the styrofoam that goes to waste in Canada originates from outside of the country. So it's to do with goods and services that are being shipped to Canada. And of course, then, you know, it's our problem to deal with the material left over. StyroGo, we basically have a mobile platform where we figured out how to take our trucks and we operate in hub cities, and then are able to offer a wide range in geographic coverage. We're across Alberta and BC, all the way up the island as well. An example for those who are familiar with the Alberta geography, our Calgary truck can operate out of Calgary and head down the highway, hitting various cities or businesses along the route, all the way down to Lethbridge and now beyond. And by the time it rolls back to Calgary, you know, 10, 12 hours later, and that's 1 5-ton truck, a relatively small truck, but two guys, you know, they're able to pick up from 20 or 30 locations and process between 2,000 and 3,000 pounds of material. And to be able to do that over a 300-kilometer radius, you know, in the span of a few hours, is exponentially more cost efficient, time efficient, and environmentally efficient. Our mix of clients include municipal governments. We operate and service more than 40 municipalities in Alberta, as well as commercial enterprises, large and small. We service from the, you know, mom and pop shops all the way up to national companies like, you know, grocery stores and that kind of thing. One of the main things that we're able to provide for our clients also is that we're able to track and monitor all movement of material and categorize it and account for it. So we're able to provide them with greenhouse gas reduction reports, carbon footprint reduction reports, so that they can see not only the obvious, hey, it's not in the landfill anymore, but we're able to explain to them and show them in a quantifiable manner the ESG elements and you know, pro-environmental benefit that their activity and choice to recycle this material is happening. And we'll show more later in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Robert. Next, we'll have Joanne from Chop Value.
Hi, I am Joanne Dapo, and really proud to be here representing Chop Value YYC and the team there, as well as Chop Value as a whole. What we do is we collect used bamboo chopsticks and we remanufacture them into beautiful home decor items, everything from coasters and charcuterie boards to custom countertops, desktops, feature walls, real conversation pieces. When you think about it, chopsticks travel from overseas where they're produced. They travel thousands of miles to get to our country. We use them once, 20, 30 minutes, and then they end up in our landfills. So what we want to prevent as Chop Value is we want to collect those chopsticks, transport them back to our microfactories and design great products, manufacture them. Real people in every city are actually manufacturing and sell them back to businesses, back to consumers. And many times we actually sell the products back to the partners who have collected the chopsticks for us. So they'll ask for feature walls or tabletops, which is kind of cool. Every week we strive for 500 kilograms of chopsticks to keep up with production. Just to put that into perspective, that's about 120 to 140,000 chopsticks every week. So you can imagine what's happening globally. It's said that about 1.5 billion chopsticks are used every week globally. So chop value is a global concept with local commitment. We want a microfactory in every city. Right now, our head office is in Vancouver. They've developed all of the manufacturing processes, and Calgary is very proud to be their first franchise. We came on last year. We now have Montreal. We now have Fraser Valley as of yesterday. And by the end of this year, we will probably have 5 to 6 Canadian cities that have come on with microfactories. And really excited in 2022, early 2022, we're welcoming Chop Value Las Vegas, Chop Value Singapore. And really, we don't even want to stop there. We want to see a microfactory in every city that uses chopsticks. So I guess full disclosure, I didn't even know the term, honestly, circular economy until I jumped into the Chop Value family. Maybe I'm a little embarrassed to say that, but it's the truth. So I may not be an expert or a scientist, but I have spent a lot of this year watching TED Talks, watching YouTube and seeing all the circular models out there. And it's so exciting. And I'm excited to see how Chop Value fits into that. I honestly have a genuine interest in being part of the change, the shift. It's not easy because sometimes it can be overwhelming and you think it's so big and what can I as an individual do? And sometimes you just want to give up because you think it's just bigger than you are. And I guess Chop Value is here to say that you can make a difference even one little chopstick at a time. So I'm happy to talk more about our processes when we go to the breakout rooms and answer the questions, but proud to be here and thank you.
Great, thank you, Joanne. Now we'll go to Yakomin from Metal Tech Alley.
Thanks for having me here today. My name is Yakomin van Tonder. I'm the director for Metal Tech Alley. We are a marketing strategy for the Lower Columbia Initiatives Corporation, and we're in Trail in British Columbia, rural British Columbia, I have to mention. We have Tech Metals Trail operations right in the middle of our community, one of the world's largest fully integrated zinc and lead smelting facilities and refining complexes. We also have 2 large recycling facilities, KC Recycling and Retrieve Technologies. And they recycle batteries, car batteries, lithium-ion batteries, any kind of battery that you can think of. The lead and the acid that comes from the recycling process goes back to Tech to process that into the smelter. From a circular economy perspective, we have this very unique ecosystem here. It starts as a linear economy with mining and manufacturing, but it ends up as a circular economy with the recycling of these products, and we're putting it back into the smelter and into the system. A great example of that is lead. Lead is the most recycled product in the world, and 99% of a car battery gets recycled right here in Trail. KC Recycling is the largest lead acid battery or car battery recycler in Western Canada and the Pacific Northwest of the US. In addition to the lead acid batteries, they process electronics and cathode ray tubes glass, and that old, very old televisions that you get. They sell all the commodities generated by their operations, which include aluminum, copper, plastic, and steel. The lead and acid goes back to Trail operations, back into the smelter, and it goes back into a car battery, and within 6 to 8 years, it all comes back to us for recycling. They're also recycling the plastic casing in which the battery is used. And that becomes another car battery casing, which will come back here again in 6 to 8 years and becomes another car battery casing. We also have retrieve technologies, which also recycle any kind of batteries, but what's most important about that is they recycle fully electric vehicle batteries right here in Trail. They're the only recycler of Tesla batteries in the Pacific Northwest. Apart from all of that, Tech has got a list of 38 byproducts that they don't use, or it's not economically viable for them to further refine. We have companies like Phoenix Advanced Materials that use Tech byproducts to further refine it right here in Trail. They refine cadmium, indium, tin, antimony, tellurium for various markets such as solar panels, X-ray semiconductors, extreme ultraviolet I always struggle with that word, lithography, and many more. There are definitely more advanced materials opportunities similar to this right here in Trail. I'll talk a bit more about more details later on.
Great, thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Cody from Sharewares.
Hey, yeah, I'm so glad that giant car batteries don't just go to the landfill and they can be recycled. That's amazing. Hi, Cody Irwin from Sharewares in Vancouver, and we are building a plug-and-play borrowing platform to make it easy for businesses and communities to rapidly transition to reusable packaging, and thus end the global single-use waste crisis. Well, you're probably thinking that this sounds just a tad bit ambitious, but I'll tell you why and how we can make this happen. First of all, we are not a fresh startup. Sharewares is a COVID pivot. My pre-COVID corporate food service company dropped off a cliff when offices closed due to the pandemic. However, as devastating as this was actually a huge opportunity. With the government support, we were able to repurpose our company's infrastructure and resources to go on this new exciting adventure. Over the last year and a half, we've dug deep into all the variables and scenarios of creating a safe, accessible, and truly scalable citywide borrowing platform. We conducted numerous R&D projects, such as analyzing tracking technologies, building out a washing facility, studying material toxicity, analyzing end-of-life options, setting up circular plastics partnerships, packaging innovation and redesign, and creating fulfilling employment for people with barriers. This has got us to where we are today, with the key components tested and ready to launch with our pilot on September 14th. We have products that are made ethically here in North America out of 100% recycled content, a washing facility that can process 5,000 assets per day, an optional convenience app to make it easy for customers to find, borrow, and return reusables, and a complex backend software to track unique product tags and collect data, and as well as power the whole operation. Now you're probably wondering how we're going to take all those ingredients and bake them into a magical cake of mass adoption. The real star of the show is harnessing the familiar low-cost deposit return model, and then coupling this with our technology. This makes our platform fully plug and play into current supply chains with very, very, very minimal systems and habit change. We've already seen that progressive businesses are quite excited to try borrowing platforms, so we believe market penetration can be achieved quite quickly, and then groundswell and social pressure, as well as hopefully government support via policy, will accelerate the transition to circularity. And then after that, the real fun begins, and the full power of the circular economy will be seen in all of its glorious social and economic benefits. Yeah, thanks very much for listening, and I look forward to your questions. Thanks.
Great. So we're going to move into the next piece of our panel discussion. So we have one question that we're going to ask each of the panelists, and then at the end we'll have a little bit of time to take some questions from the floor, and obviously we'll have breakout rooms so that you can ask the panelists additional questions at your leisure, depending on your interest. So our first panelist question is going to be for BizBiz Share. So Charles, what inspired the circular economy phase of your business?
So absolutely. So our CEO, Elliot, how this got started is that he went out to Alberta to work on the oil sands like 10 years ago or whenever it was booming in there. And then while he was working there, the truck that he was working on broke down. And what they had to do is they had to wait for a day and a half, because they were in a remote area of Alberta, for the mechanic to come from the other city and fix up the truck, when directly at the job site in front of him and all the other job sites were the exact same truck just sitting there not doing anything. So he's like, why can't we rent it out? So that's what really inspired him. He said, I want to create a platform where businesses can maximize their assets and resources, whether it's they rent them out, generate extra revenues, and essentially decrease the carbon footprint, because instead of making a huge capital expenditure, let's say you need a dump truck, right, for only a job. Well, instead of going and spending $100,000 or $150,000 to buy a dump truck, you can rent it out from a local company that might be, 5 to 10 kilometers away from you. So that was what really inspired the circular economy, is to really create this platform where companies can maximize their resources, stop buying and start sharing more. And that's where it came from the Alberta Oil Sands.
Great, thank you so much, Charles. So we have the same question for Provision Coalition. Cher, would you like to answer?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can pull up the slides, that would be fabulous. So what inspired the circular economy phase of our business was really standing in this possibility of what if, and how can we see food differently so that we can create these ideas that change how we think, how we eat, and how we live. Next slide. What I'm going to share with you is some of the examples of the impact that we've created with this mindset of being inspired by the circular economy. So I talked about the Our Food Future initiative, and in that we have been working with 58 businesses, 50 of them being micro-sized companies, to transform them into circular businesses while they are still small, to grow with that mindset. And then the 8 that you see on the screen, to transform those that are already sort of small, medium, and large businesses, and will require a much broader experience to transform to circularity. So we've used our proprietary model, we call it resiliency with purpose. And one of the examples that I'll share with you is from Wellington Brewery. Next slide. When we started working with them, the first thing we did was go into the operation, and we identified that there was about $160,000 worth of beer that was going down the drain on an annual basis. So the first task was, of course, to prevent that from happening. But then we also recognized that there was about 100,000 kilograms of spent grain, an unavoidable byproduct of the brewing process. And we wanted to be able to say, well, yes, it's going to livestock feed, and that's okay, but is there a way that we can upcycle or repurpose this into something that can stay within the human supply chain longer? So we worked with 7 local collaborative partners to create the first circular gourmet meal at a restaurant. And if you had a chance to watch the video, I encourage you to go and have a look. It was a really neat process to bring all of these companies together. We took the unavoidable spent grain, and we turned it into sourdough bread, and we used black soldier flies to feed rainbow trout, and we took the trout poop and we sent it over to the local potato farm, and then served 3 different meals at the Neighborhood Group restaurants, which is one of the largest B Corp certified restaurant chains in Canada. But what was most important about this experience was what came out of it. Next slide. Because the circular meal was so successful, next slide, we were able to create and launch a repurpose incubator. And so the repurpose incubator is an opportunity for us to work with companies to identify, first and foremost, do you have food waste? And do you have a stream of unavoidable byproduct that still has value? And so we will work with them to do a nutrition profile, a market analysis, an economic analysis, and then support them with identifying the value proposition and the go-to market strategy, whether that's on an ingredient or on a particular product. That repurpose incubator, next slide, is launching now the first output of it. And this is our ramen noodle meal kit. And the ramen noodles were created from the unavoidable byproduct of tofu production. You create soy whey and okara. And so we've made ramen noodles from that okara. And in October, we will be having a Upcycle Food Festival where we will showcase this meal kit. Sobeys is our retail partner, and they will be taking the meal kit across the country. In the Greater Toronto area, we will have 5 local restaurants that'll take all of those upcycled ingredients and make a whole series of new meals, as well as Compass Group is going to be showcasing the meal kit at their local universities. So if you're interested in learning more about what we're up to, feel free to get in touch with me. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So our next question is, we're actually going to skip over our question number 2, but we're going to go to question number 3. And we're going to ask this question to Styrogo. So what remaining barriers hinder the level of success of the circular economy phase of your business?
Sure. An interesting thing about styrofoam recycling is that unlike many of the other plastics in the modern age where things have really advanced, you know, even other kinds of recycling, most people remember 20 years ago when you recycled cardboard, if it had a single staple in it, it's qualified. Now it sits in a bale outside the, you know, the supermarket or whatever, covered in snow and bird poop or whatever, and for 3 months, and it's still able to be recycled, no problem. And styrofoam is kind of the forgotten orphan that didn't have any modern application applied to it. And it was kind of an out of sight, out of mind issue. So as much as there has been the ability to recycle it overseas with a fairly old-fashioned style, or it's more of a, for lack of a better way to put it, mechanical recycling, there wasn't any modern options. And it was kind of a chicken and the egg thing when we had reached out to companies that were looking to do things. The problem was they said, well, there's nobody that can really put together a viable minimum volume. And so, you know, it's kind of like, well, they won't develop the technology until it's viable, but of course it's not viable until somebody has the technology. Anyway, so we certainly built up from the ground to do the old-fashioned recycling where it goes to overseas manufacturers for moldings and other items. And it was that scaling up that got the attention of a few companies to be able to develop their technology in Canada, be able to recycle the material locally and using advanced recycling techniques. And that's a key part of it where they said 80% of the styrofoam that comes into Canada, you know, goes to landfill. Well, that's the vast majority of it. There's no point to recycle it back into styrofoam because most of it doesn't start from here. And we're not going to ship new styrofoam overseas to get sent back. So advanced recycling was the key, and to find companies that would be willing to develop the technology and engage that. And that is finally coming around where, to answer your question, I guess, the challenge was to demonstrate that there's a viable way to develop enough volume for advanced recycling technologies to be scalable. And so we're working with Green Mantra in Ontario to scale up and work with them. And we're working with 2 other companies that are looking to set up shop in both BC and Alberta. And the idea being that the styrofoam that is recycled from that marketplace can be recycled back into various other additives, waxes, other types of products that can then go to local manufacturing. So it gets recycled directly back into the local.
Great. I mean, it really does show the collaboration that had to happen cross country in order to make that, you know, remove that barrier. So that's amazing. We're going to ask the same question to Metal Tech Ali.
Thank you for that. I think one of the barriers that we have is we have this idea of a very big battery ecosystem. We already have half of it here already, but we need an entrepreneur that will come in and take over the whole battery ecosystem, where we know that the clean power that we have here, we have 7 hydro dams right in our vicinity. So the power that you get here is clean. And we will be able to trace the whole system that's used and make sure that it's low carbon, carbon neutral, whatever it is, we will be able to trace that. And that comes back to my second barrier, which I think is important. And that's something I feel very passionate about in the circular economy movement, and that is traceability. There needs to be traceability of each and every product. I think for in 10 years, hopefully we'll be able to stand in a grocery store and have a QR code and be able to trace a product and see what was the carbon emissions in getting that product on the shelf. The problem with that, of course, is the proprietary information that people don't want to share, because then the competition is going to get that. The other thing that needs to happen as well more and more is more education, similar to what we're doing now, similar to the World Circular Economy Forum. There is still a lot of people that do not even know what circular economy is. Some of them don't even know that they're doing it. They don't even know that they actually can do it much better than what they're doing now. So that's something that's very important for us as well. The other thing that we see here is there is not really a idea that people need to design products with recycling of the product in mind. A good example that we saw right here in Trail is the earbuds. I don't know how many of you are wearing earbuds right now. So you have a lithium-ion battery in each earbud plus in your case. To recycle that is very difficult, because you actually have to have one person that's going to break that open and take out that lithium-ion battery to recycle that. At this point, it's just not economically viable to do that. So there needs to be a change in design. People need to design for recycling. And if we can get people on that, first of all, get them to understand what it is, and then realize that they need to change design for recycling in mind, or reuse, whatever it is, as long as it doesn't stay on the landfill. That will be a great day in the circular economy world.
Great, thank you very much for that, Yakumin. We are going to ask the same question to Joanne at Job Value YYC.
Can I just make a note that some people need to mute their background noise and maybe turn off their video. If you're not a panelist, please make sure you've done that. Thank you.
Barriers. Well, I guess, let's face it, it's easier to throw chopsticks away. They're called disposable for a reason. So some restaurants will just throw them away. Others will say, well, we actually compost, and we think that's great. We throw the food, the chopstick, everything in the green bin, and that's good. And we say that's a great first step. But when the chopsticks reach the compost pile, they still emit carbon as they decompose. So Chop Value takes it one step further, where we actually capture the carbon in the production of our products. So that's exciting that we can actually take it that one step further and give the chopsticks sort of that eternal second life. I tend to be a little pie in the sky, so I would like to see legislation that we can only use bamboo chopsticks, because it's the only possible way that we can prevent them from ending up in the landfills. There are other types of chopsticks. I've learned that over the year. There's many, many different types. There's sort of a cheaper wood type of chopstick that doesn't have the integrity that we need to make our products, so we can't use the wood chopsticks. And then there's the reusable ones that the restaurants use, but they sort of have a lifespan as well. So they end up in the landfills. But I would like to see legislation that we can only use bamboo. And we've already seen it with plastic utensils now being bamboo utensils. The single-use straw is becoming obsolete as well. So why can't it be chopsticks? Just speaking about bamboo and why I'm so passionate about it is that it's a renewable resource that regenerates itself every 2 to 3 years. And when it's compressed, it's the strongest raw material you can work with. It's something that the product is just amazing for us to work with. Stronger than oak, harder than maple. We love it. But our barriers are still convincing the restaurants that this is a viable option. I like to say, you have 7 seconds to change someone's mind. You're standing there with your bin, and you give your little 7-second speech, and you either see the concept go over the head or the light bulb go off. And I love it when someone says, okay, now I get it, how I can make a difference on a small level. Just by taking this bin and putting the chopsticks into this bin, I can make a difference. So you have that 7 seconds that you can do that. And then you go back 2 weeks later and you say, do you know that last week you saved 10 kilograms in chopsticks from going to the landfill? And they're just blown away by the numbers. I would call it barriers, but a challenge that we have is also being aware of our carbon footprint. So we want to open more microfactories so we can lessen the transportation time of the chopsticks going from restaurant to our microfactories. So that's why we're so passionate about having the microfactories in every different city. Yeah, so I guess the barriers are just challenges, and you just have to be persistent in telling the story. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Joanne. And I'm sure some of those challenges are not new to other companies either. So our next question is question number 4. And we've saved this special one for Cody at Sharewares. What kind of external support would improve the impact of the circular economy phase of your business?
I definitely say a cash injection into the ecosystem, not even like our business itself, but like the whole circular economy ecosystem. That would just really set this on fire. I believe that governments at all levels need to start getting like creative with how they move money around. With I guess COVID and just money being burned all day long, there isn't a lot of that available. But I don't think it has to be a financial burden on the governments. One city councilor, Michael Wiebe here in Vancouver, had a fantastic idea of increasing business licenses just a small amount across an industry, and then when you go to renew your business license, you could also get a coupon that was a higher value than that increase, and that could be used towards say like a reuse program or something else that's a better for you program. And it's it's an opt-in option, so hopefully that will come into play at some point. But things like that, those types of ideas need to be put into play to move it around, to incentivize the better business and de-incentivize the bad business. Also on that cash injection note is grants. There isn't really any circular grants. There's a few cities here and there that have great initiatives across North America and the world, but at like a large scale, the grants aren't focused on circularity. And even though it says it in all their strategic plans of municipal, provincial, federal, all their plans mention circular economy and circularity that they're supporting, but there's nothing specifically directed towards it, and most of it's towards recycling or manufacturing. And if anybody's applied to a grant before, they're extremely specialized, and if you don't fit into their mandates like to the T, then you're immediately excluded. So it's extremely difficult to get a grant. We've applied to several and failed at all. Either I'm a really bad writer, which I'm an engineer and not a writer, so I'm not a good salesperson, but I don't believe that was that, because we spent a lot of time on those. So yeah, cash injection, government support, getting creative, that would be awesome for everybody. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Cody. And yeah, as an engineer too, it's sometimes a little challenging on the writing part of things. We do have some time to take some audience questions, and I know that there have been a few in the chat. I was maybe going to ask Eileen if she doesn't mind reading out some of the ones in the chat, and we can direct it to, I guess, one of our panelists.
Sure. Katerina asked a really good question about laws, and if there's any Canadian regulation, or is Canadian regulation a barrier or a driver for circular economy? And I think Robert had a little bit of an answer to that already in the chat, if you'd like to speak to that.
Yeah. Sorry, did you want me to answer?
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Certainly, we have seen where local government shows an interest, and there's resounding public interest in a program, and yet local government will sit on the fence rather than risk offending any particular, interest group, labor group, or whatever. And that's where an EPR, where it's more of a top-down perspective, where, various entities like local government can say, well, we're forced to do it, and therefore, it's the politics of it. When you get into the bigger picture of things, that sometimes that's where regulators play, a role, and the other side being where businesses sometimes are reluctant to engage because it would put them in a perceived position of disadvantage. Kind of like with the beverage deposit, where no company would voluntarily do it because then, of course, it's not a level playing field. Whereas when it's regulated and everybody has to play by the same rules, then everybody gets on board, not just because they have to, but because they want to, because then there's no perceived disadvantage. So certainly there is a role for government to play in making sure that it's a level playing field and that all businesses can participate, in an environmental fashion, but because the rules are the same for everybody, there's no disadvantage. And one other side to that can be somewhere like Vancouver, where, if you have the local government is interested to put in regulations that require recycling of various products or services, you just have to make sure that the neighboring governments are on board the same page. All that happens is, if something in the actual Vancouver area changes, then waste companies will, just move it out to the neighboring jurisdiction where it's cheaper. And as much as, some of these jurisdictions say, well, we have rules, they're not allowed to move stuff from one waste region to another. Companies are very savvy, especially in the COVID time where everyone's felt they hit to their pocketbook. They can move material from internally one company to another, and then it's considered local material to go to waste, for a cheaper price. So regulation does play an important part of this, and it's just to make sure that everybody is on the same level playing field, and then businesses are usually very happy to engage and work.
I'd just like to add to that, yeah, businesses are super happy when those things come in play because they get to blame everything on the government, and the government can be the bad guy, and they're like, oh, I have to pay this extra amount for this or this or this. If it's not a policy, then it's just or an internal policy within the business, then the people, like their customers, could be upset with them for fining them or giving them this fee. But if they're like, it's the government, can't do anything about it, then they can commiserate together, and then they pay that money happily, and everybody wins.
The piece that I would add from a food system perspective is the lack of communication between the various bodies of government. So, for example, Environment and Climate Change Canada and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada have strong aspirations for a circular food system, and yet the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is not looped into those discussions. And so we get into these conversations about, well, I want to shift my package, but I can't meet shelf life, or I can't meet some of the quality parameters, or I want to upcycle the livers and hearts from my animal, but I have these CFIA regulations that prevent me from being able to capitalize on those opportunities. So the point of that is just we need more collaboration between the various governments in order to prevent some of those regulatory barriers that we're facing in trying to move to a circular economy.
If I could add something on the positive side, is that because we do work with the government, and we have deals with several cities across Canada. I mean, just in Quebec, we have 5 cities that are on board that will be using our platform, and in Ontario with the Circular Innovation Council, which used to be called the Recycling Council of Ontario, we have a partnership with them where they're now going to bring our platform to 31 or 32 different municipalities and cities across Ontario. The city of Winnipeg literally has a contract of ours in their hands. They just have to discuss it. So there is a positive side where local governments are embracing the sharing in the circular economy, and they want more technology and more things where they can facilitate that for the companies in their area. But on a grander scale, I agree with what Cher just said, is that we need more collaboration from the federal, provincial, and local, where maybe they can create some kind of board and discuss all these things that we need to do. But again, on the positive side is that from our end, we do see some progression, and we do have deals with the government. So there is some traction that is slowly but surely starting to build towards the sharing in the circular economy.
I can add to that, and that is that we as MetalTech Alley, we are working with Circular Economy Leadership Canada with a very big federal ask. We've done a statement of interest for the federal government to get involved in circular economy. Apart from that, for us in this area, Western Diversification, they've changed their name now to Pacifican. They have launched the funding opportunities, and circular economy is actually specifically named in there. So if you want to go and look at that, it's part of the federal government, but it's through Western Diversification, and they have specific options for circular economy funding in there.
Great. We do have another question. I'll put this out. So what has been the most effective way to communicate circular economy brands, products, and companies to early adopters? We make a circular consumer product, and while our growth is fantastic, marketing is still too expensive, trying to find ways to scale awareness and meet early. And I'm going to point this to Provision to start, because I think you guys might be the best to answer.
Yeah, I apologize. I was responding to a comment in the chat box. So can you repeat that for me?
What has been the most effective way to communicate circular economy brands, products, and companies to early adopters?
It is a great question. And for us, we focus on getting clear on what is that authentic purpose of why you do what you do. And so when you have that clarity and you can say, you know, this is why we do what we do beyond making money. Every company has to make money, but if you have that clarity on that purpose, that can drive engagement with your stakeholders. And so when we're engaging with our clients, it's all about getting that clarity on the purpose and then building that communication plan so that people can stand with you about what it is that the impact that you're trying to create in the world. And so that would be my recommendation, is that you have that clarity on your why, and then build an action plan or a territory, as we like to call it, where you can bring that purpose to life.
I also say there's like analyzing people's actual motivations. I posted in the chat. I just copy pasted that from an email. I realized it said that be found on our One Earth website, but that's not our website. That's just, I pasted that. So One Earth, Van City, and Citra did a study in Vancouver on what motivates people to do the things they do, and grouping everybody and categorizing everybody. So knowing like the customers and how they act and how to motivate them is super key. I mean, Vancouver is a little bit in the greener realm, but I think Canadians in general, or for the Canadian viewers, and the Taylor posed that question, I think Canadian. Anyway, so yeah, using that could be a good resource to kind of direct your marketing.
We are working with a company out of Vancouver called Share Reuse Repair. The website is sharereuserepair.org. And they will actually take a smaller company, do a business case, see how you can further increase your circular economy footprint, and how to make it economically viable for you to do. They are doing intakes every now and then. And as was said just now, they also look at consumer behavior. Why are they not recycling? What will motivate them to do it more? And they bring all of that back into what your business plan is, and see how you can still make money out of being circular. Thanks, Cody, for the link that you put in the chat.
Yeah, thank you, panelists, for your thoughtful answers to that. There is another question. As for access to fund solutions, is crowdfunding an option to upgrade businesses' structure into a circular economy? Not sure who wants to take that one on.
Well, I personally have seen great success with crowdfunding because it creates some public awareness around the product. And I've had a couple of close business friends who have had success. So I do think it works. I think it depends on which platform you choose to do crowdsourcing. and
I can speak to this
crowdfunding?
a little bit, Erin. So in Calgary, we have a crowdfunding hub that we've launched it in partnership with Internovus Canada. And if your company is prepared and has a crowdfunding is really excellent, but we can help support entrepreneurs to get to that space. There's a couple of kinds of crowdfunding. So if you're crowdfunding for rewards or prizes, so people get some sort of benefit that's like a t-shirt or something, I'm just using that as an example, a circular economy t-shirt. But you can also do crowdfunding for shares, etc. So being knowledgeable about how crowdfunding can work for your company in terms of finding investors or finding supporters is something that people should try to learn about a little bit. The Canadian organization that does that in Canada is a fundraiser. I'll just put fundraiser. Sorry, I can't spell. So just if anyone has any questions about that, just send me a chat or an email. I'll put my
Yeah, maybe what we'll do is we will move on to the conclusion of our session, because we want to break out some breakout rooms, and that's to give the audience some ability to talk in smaller groups directly with the businesses and ask them any of your pressing questions. You might want to feel comfortable doing that in a smaller group setting. So maybe we'll just go back to the slideshow, and I think we just have some end result or some thank yous. I do want to thank Lori from Internovus and Impact Calgary for helping us moderate the Zoom or have the Zoom account to host this session. I appreciate. Also want to thank Circular Regions for their great partnership in helping us to do the secondary intake form and publish our case studies. If you hadn't noticed, we did have a QR code earlier on in the presentation that takes you directly to the case studies. And so please, we will be sending this presentation out and we'll be also publishing this recording on a YouTube channel so that you can view it again after, or if anyone who missed the session would like to view it again, they can. And we do have, main contacts are myself, Erin Bird, and Audrey Bands. If anyone wants to reach out to us after the event to get more information on either any of the work that we've presented here today, or to get involved in general with circular economy across Canada, please do reach out. We'd love to have more people on board. The purpose is really to just keep growing this movement. I'll maybe actually hand it over to Audrey just for some closing remarks from you as well, Audrey.
I'm just overwhelmed by how many people registered and to see the enthusiasm about learning more about circular economy business, because my passion in life is to get recognition for all those business entrepreneurs who are reinventing the way that we live our lives on this planet. So this is such an inspiring snapshot of where we can continue to get recognition for all these SMEs who are so creative about what they want to do, and you can tell their heart's in it. It's not a bottom line financial thing. It's because you love what you're doing and you can see that it's impacting the world. So thank you to all of our small business, circular enthusiasts and hardworking entrepreneurs.
So maybe if we can just go back a slide, it just will tell you a little bit about the breakout rooms. So you have the ability as an attendee, you'll see that there is a little tab at the bottom that says breakout rooms, and there are 6 listed. So what we'll do is we'll allow each presenter to go into their breakout room, and then please do join the one that you are most interested in talking to. And it'll be just small group discussions, and we have that available for the next 10 minutes or even a bit beyond, because we do have kind of a buffer of another 30 minutes just in case. So if you're conversation carries over a little bit more than the 1:30, then that's fine. We're not going to be coming back here to do any other closing remarks. So feel free to just continue on, have your one-on-one with the businesses. And thank you so much for attending today. And we hope to have many more events like this in the future. So stay tuned.
And just one note, anyone who's not rushing off to a breakout room, if you have any questions for our group, being Circular Economy Clubs of Canada, we're here and we'll stay here in this main room.